Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am excited to introduce you to our guest today. Before I do that, here is a quote for this podcast. Inspired. Through faith, we let go of what could happen and create what is willed to happen. Inspired. Guardian value. Our guest today is inspiring a friend of the Culture Matters podcast, mentor to their guardians, and even those of us yet to take the designation. I see them as a mentor in many ways, a trusted steward of their culture, a supporter of Culture Matters from the beginning, a regular on the Culture Matters podcast. If you aren't familiar with them when you realize who I'm introducing, well, you may not listen to the Culture Matters podcast yet, but I promise you, you listen enough to the show, you're going to confront yourself in their word or their representation of the word. They are a founder of Guardian Roofing and Siding, a leader, and creating something really special and have been for a long time. Today, I started with the quote, inspired, one of the Guardian values of a company. Through faith, we let go of what could happen and create what is willed to happen. Today, we're gonna play around with what would be the opposite of this value, like if we were to invert it. And our guest today is Robert Frehafer. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me back. Good morning. Appreciate again your very nice, very nice introduction to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. What does this value mean? What behaviors are we attempting to inspire?
So I can talk about it from a unique perspective. It's my own, right? So even when we talk about guardian values, we spend so much time in this, however many series timing talking about this, right? Eight, almost almost 15 so far, just talking about the values. And it's something to risk sounding like a broken record. It's something that comes from experience. And the way that these were created was with your help, coming along and shadowing and experiencing me and what we do and what goes on. And if I could I guess boil it down to the simplest um useful utility of the word, it's to just navigate life and the experiences in life, and not in a fearful context. So it's so, like, we do a lot of door knocking in this business. We do a lot of marketing, we do a lot of introductions, and we do a lot of work up front for people to help them get the resources, the money from the insurance company for their damaged roofing and siding. So we do all this stuff up front, and we do not know what the end result is going to be. I that's part of my demonstration with somebody. My communication is that's part of another one of our values, listening intentionally and educating the customer by telling the truth. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day, and our word is super important to us. So the language of through faith, we let go of what could happen, because in the past experiences, it's like I could stop myself from going and knocking on the door. Why? Because somebody could, worst case scenario, be very violent when they answer the door. That's like the worst, right? But or they could hurt my feelings, or they could say something mean, or it could be a waste of my time. Like, these are all these negative things that I could think about, that I would say are fear-minded, or scarcity mentality of, like, oh well, if I knock this door and I spend this time, this hour, and I don't get any return from it. It's a waste of my time. I could go do something else. So it all comes from the but that's like a small example of it, and it applies to the largest examples. Um so that's really, and but it does have, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this part of it. So, this is what's very unique about the relationship with you, Jay, and how you were able to shadow watch and then, put to word what goes on here, because this is, and it may just be the way that I'm interpreting it after the fact, but through faith, right? Like, so that word is it's not loosely utilized here. Like, faith is the hope in things unseen. So from a biblical context, I'm working through my life in faith, and when I do my work, I'm doing it in faith, trusting in God, trusting in His sovereign plan. So when I says we let go of what could happen, it's all the crappy thoughts that go on in my mind. That's what could happen, even though these things could happen, these negative things or whatever it would be. I guess you could flip it to this positive side too. Like, we let go of what could happen, because that could set, our expectation can create disappointment. So we let go of what could happen. And then the exciting part for the language here is we create what is willed to happen. So, that can be like looked at on two different sides of the coin, but creating, that's like an exciting thing. And especially when I think about the relationship with God in this creation, I look at God as a creator, but also He's placed us here on this earth to go out and subdue, like from a biblical standpoint, from Genesis, to subdue the earth and live in it. So we actually get an opportunity to go out and create. So to do, right, to go out and do. And then that part where it says what is willed to happen, that's another one where I could say, I could look at it from a self-centered will, like, this is my will, I'm going to make it happen. I don't interpret it that way. I interpreted that it's God's will, what's willed to happen. Like, he's sovereign. I just need to let go of what could happen, go out there, have faith, and do it. And then it's what is willed to happen is His will, right? I just show up to experience it, good or bad. From my perspective, what could be good or what could be bad. But I'm just showing up for what it is. So that's where this comes from. And it's such a basic application. Like I said, is go out and knock on the door. See what happens. You never know who you're going to meet and what's going to go on. So that's the regular, in a sense, version of the inspired.
How has it that impacted the door knocking?
So it's it would I feel like it would be an understatement to just talk about how it's impacted door knocking. It's impacted every single area of my life. It was such a freedom to understand what type of a waste of energy that I've put into my own thoughts. I'm not saying that we don't get advisors and counsel as a leader, or anybody in any part of life, like that. You get advisor, you get counsel, you consider past experiences, and then you make decisions you educate yourself and make decisions based off of these things. So that's reasonable, but somebody like me is an over analyzer and will think, and not only that, I'm ideological, so I'm super emotionally driven. So these things can just slow down progress. It can grind it to a halt, and it can create a really tough experience of fear. So it's impacted my life in so many areas, to utilize this value, because I can start to recognize and compartmentalize, like, oh, this is just fear. This is my concern. Not only that, it's taken me to this other place where I could realize these self-negative thoughts, or negative worldviews based off of past experiences or what I've seen go on, and my judgment going on. But it's also made me aware of this other side, like this positive side, potentially. Like, if I just think like, oh, this is what could happen. I could knock these 50 doors and I can talk to 30 people out of them. And out of those 30 people, 20 might decide to work with me. Out of those 20 that work with me, 18 might get awarded, paid by the insurance. If I sell 15, I'm going to sell this amount of money and I get this thing. Even that is actually a spend of energy. It I've used it many times because it's creation and it gives like this positive, but it's not like the plan. It's not about, it's still an emotionally driven um mindset that I found is very, it's not secure. It's not a secure foundation, I'll say, based off of just, moving forward and I'm not saying it's a dull humdrum, like when I connect myself to this concept that I'm going out and living out God's will, that is not dull to me because I've met so many people and had so many conversations that have been so valuable from this action. So yeah, this has impacted way more than for me than just knocking the door. But here's a very interesting part that comes up from you asking that question. How's it impacted knocking doors? And as anybody that's listening through this, they're going to hear that, these values, even though they've been written for 4 years, and then they've been in the wall on the wall for 2.5, 3 years, they have not been, you know, expressed and conversed about and taught through, with the exception of very minimal experiences. So I don't believe that it has, short of the normal teaching, like, okay, let's not let this impact you, not using this value, but still teaching the same value through application. Like, hey, we just go, don't think about those things. Like, well, I would teach it in that way, but not utilizing the value towards the door knocking. So the simple answer to your question is, how's it impacted the door knocking? Utilizing of this actual word of inspired, probably not much, but through what I do, through what we teach, through how we talk regularly, that same value is transferred without using the external means of a pre-written value.
Hmm. When I listen to your explanation, I have this visual that comes to mind because you said through faith we let go of what could happen and create what is willed to happen. And your explanation of will to happen, you're saying it's less about what I'm willing, but the inevitability that there will be an outcome. So that makes me think like I'm trying to draw it. Can you see this?
Not particular. I see the scratchy lines and then some words and some scratchy
Yeah,
lines.
there's and for those that are listening, like how would I describe this? There I drew like a two lines, on a page. So there's three sections. On the top section, the bottom section is all lines, like shaded in. And that's where I think we get stuck in reactivity. Like we're not where we are. We're not in the conversation, right? I'm not on the podcast with you, or I'm not with the quote unquote prospect. The fact that I'm even calling my brother, sister, what have you, a prospect, the separation of my values, of my presence. That's what comes to mind when I think of that. I'm not really with them. I'm actually not even there at all. I'm just going through a script in my mind of what I need to say, maybe to get them to agree with what I want. To me, that all feels very fraudulent, like on a human level. So why would I want to meet people? We can call that sell, but why would I want to meet people? I wouldn't, because why would I want to lie all day long? I wouldn't. Why would I want to be separated from my neighbor all day long? I wouldn't. I wouldn't personally. I don't want to be with people all day long and then not be with them. But that's what I observe it in the or feel and have felt if I'm going out. And that's what I think I'm getting from the it's like to be in the middle, to be present and to be with the person. You mentioned the part of like thinking about oh, if I talk to 50 people, I get 30. Like all of that may be true, but does that really inspire the connection necessary to be with the people? Or does that just self-glorify and temporarily excite or move me into action for my own self-centeredness for a period of time? And what toll could that have on me over time? Could it make me unreasonably anxious, irrationally depressed? Like, you see all these, I've lost friends, salespeople, because they succeeded their way to the bottle or whatever that vice was. They created a pathway for their own destruction, essentially, through their hyper intense focus on everything other than like people. Yeah, other than people. So when I'm listening to your explanation, I'm thinking that's what comes to mind. It's like this picture of, you have a page, you have three sections. Top section, bottom section is blacked out. And those are those two universes of the other, the separation of me and the person I'm interacting with. One might be like, oh, I'm not going to take the action because I'm afraid of what could happen. The other could be, I'm going to take the action, so I'm going to embody the fear and I'm going to use it to not be present with the people. I'm just going to be, like that's that narrative of buyers are liars. Like I have to convince myself of all these things that separate me from the buyer, like as a person, just to do the work. Well, I'm not there either. I can get results in that. I know all the questions. I don't have to listen to get answers. I can just robotically work. Each person is a number. Each person gets me closer to the outcome. That's what comes to mind next. It's like these two different universes. And then what you're describing is being in a more simple way, maybe, is presence. Like I get excited about meeting people. I can meet people all day long. I don't want to meet people if I have to lie to them. I don't want to meet people if I'm afraid of them. So that's what the visual comes about. It's like that there's in that middle piece that's not grayed out is an interaction between two people, person A and person B. If I'm going to assume the role of person A, how am I relating to person B? They can go as negative as they want. Or, if the as they want. They may not, are how in control of how negative they go, are they? So that's the grace. That's I'm meeting people. I'm with them. It's we're interacting. That's what I get from your lesson of the value of your interpretation of what of the value. Through faith, we let go of what could happen. Right? Perceivably positive or perceivably negative, or actually positive or actually negative. And just that create piece, that's what I'm trying to draw here. If the two lines that make three bars or three sections on the page, top section is blacked out, bottom section is blacked out, the middle is clear. That's the create piece. But what is creation? It's two people talking and listening and dialoguing together, present together, like working through the emotionality of being enemies. I want something from you. You want something from me. I have something you need. You have something I need. Or maybe you don't or aren't sure. And I think you do and you don't. We're enemies. I am trespassing on your time that you will never get back. I am robbing from your future generations. Or I'm not. That create peace. And then like whatever like you said, what is will to happen? All sorts of things are going to happen. I know that I don't want to run around and treat people with disrespect. And I think it's disrespectful when I look at everyone as a means to the end. Like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the list of, you know, and that's an inevitability when we business stuff. It has diminishing returns if we don't remind ourselves, oh, Robert, yeah, you're a person. Let's be people. So that's what I get from the your breakdown of that value. What was your, if we're going to teach the audience how to contradict the value, where would one start? Where would we start?
Well, before we jump into that, I think I think I'd like to respond back to some of those things that you were saying, especially about like the the center, right, of your page, right? Like what being present, right? So you nailed it with being present. If we look at each individual that we're going to as a number, a metric, and a means to an end, we are more than likely going to be unauthentic and going through the motions. There's so much psychologically that could start building up into there if we don't handle each person as an individual, each door that we go to knock, each appointment that we go on, each adjuster that shows up to the appointment, every signing that we do, whatever the meeting is that we're doing, if we don't slow down and be present, we're going to miss it. And the other thing that I think for me, which is it's a clear value, but as you said it brings up potentially uh, I say we're here to help people. That's what we do. We're here to help. Like it's the business model is we are here to help. So coming to the door, right? If we look at it from a door knocking standpoint, we say, oh, I just got to talk to these people, do this thing, introduce myself, finally break through and make a connection, right? But the like you said, if you're going out and you're looking at it that way, like who would want to show up? Why meet? Why lie? Why talk to these people? Because it's something you're not even going to want to do if it becomes scripted and what it is. But if you
Oh,
if
I should add though to that, I absolutely am going to be incented to do it if I'm getting tons of results. I'm not going to be thinking anymore. I'm just going to be like those commission checks are hitting. I'm definitely going to be doing that. This is where incentives are so play such a key role. The question is, what are the diminishing returns over time? Like, how long can I actually thrive unthinking? So sorry to interrupt, but I
no,
think that I want to throw that in the pot for you to.
yeah, well, you called that, and I thought I wrote it down here, which is something like how long to get to the bottle, or something like this, like or the vice. Like eventually, something's going to win out. Either you're going to change your actions, or you're going to shove down those poor feelings, right? That's where the vice comes into play. But I don't want to miss the point of what I was saying, which is that the the concept of going out and looking at each individual person is you're there to help, right? That's the value. And when you're coming in from that standpoint, um, it is a totally different. For me, the impact is totally different at the door. You brought up the doors. So I'm speaking about, or I brought it up, one of us brought it up. I'm speaking about that. If I go to the door thinking like, I want to get a job, and I do, like, that's part of it. You can't get rid of that side of I'm going to work. But if I go to the door solely with that concept, like I want a job, I want to get a sign in, I only want a job, me. I'm going to start getting frustrated with people that are saying no to me. I'm going to start getting, but if I'm going out like I have a bag of gold right here and I'd like to give it to you, let me help you. And the gold is my knowledge, my experience, my awareness, the things that I know that they don't know. So if I continue to go out like that, I'll have a higher probability of somebody saying, okay, yeah, I want your gold. I want you to give that to me. Sure. So I don't know if I'm like explaining this well, but like going out to help the client with the concept that you're there to help and you're going to give them all the information, you're going to give them your services, everything up front until you get to the point where they get a roofing or siding project paid for. And it's like, but now you have to use the proper words to like get get that point across to a client. So it's just something that when you bring it up, it's like, yeah, this definitely it. If it's taught to somebody within the organization, like just go say this word and just go do this without being partnered and coupled with the fact that we are here to help these people and it's a win-win, right? That's another value that we have laid out when, but so all that being said, that is the actuality of it. And you were going to get into the inverse because that's
Yeah.
really the main reason for this podcast is the inverse of this. What is the opposite of this value?
What comes to mind?
Well, just before we jumped on, I looked at it and wrote down. I wrote so from a standpoint of uh
Mm.
from a standpoint of the word, like rather than I, because all these values, and for the listener that's not aware, it's GUARDIAN. So we're on the I from guardian, and the word the value now is inspired. But the inverse of that I wrote down is I for insecure,
Uh,
and then the inverse of it is through fear. We hold on to every past experience and control every situation around us to our advantage rather than through faith we let go of what could happen and create what is willed to happen. So through my mindset it's faith,
mm.
fear, holding rather than letting go, and control rather than create.
Yeah, I love the control piece because like think of the opposite. So I'm gonna through fear, we hold on to every past experience. So for example, let's say I've had uh X amount of interactions with potential customers that I have felt have been negative. And let's say they were. There's enough information to demonstrate that anyone that almost anyone would agree they were negative. I mean, there was name calling and rudeness, things that we can recall. It wouldn't be surprising the control piece that I'd create. I'd have to cope with that. It might be appealing to me, the idea if someone's telling me, someone I perceive as in a position of power, a position of success, a position of control and respectability and credibility, if they tell me, you know, don't listen to the negative people, or don't listen to the hate, buyers or liars. You could add the kind of, because when I think of that, those assumptive statements, that assumes that that next person is all those things. I mean, is it not that? And that to me uh, uh, infers psychological control. It's almost like I'm now embodying the negativity that I once had disdain for. I have disdain for. I'm bringing, I am bringing that into a relationship I've yet to have with a person I've yet to know, with a person I've yet to meet. I'm never going to meet them because they're always going to mirror what I brought to it. That it wasn't even me. It's just an idea of separation between me and my neighbor. It's a false idea. It's me holding on to hate, to uh, you know, it's like a poison. That's what comes to mind when I hear the opposite. Through fear, we hold on to every past experience. So if I have had negative experiences with potential customers that bought or didn't buy, and I'm bringing that into the next one because I have to convince myself of things that are half true, then I'm going to live a lie in my work. It's not going to be as light. It's going to be heavy. Eventually, I might not be able to carry it. And I could get so good, but how I get good has consequences. I could get so good that I'm so separated from my customer or potential customer. Yeah, my potential customer, that I actually never become close to my actual customers, that I actually never connect with myself, that I actually lose myself in the creation of my whole empire. And I've seen that so many times. It seems to be like a thing that just occurs. And how do we fight it? Or how do we burden it? How do we lift it? And I at the root of culture, I think selling is at the root of it because it reveals how the people reveal themselves in the relations of conflict. I would even go so far to say that closedness, that ideology, the ideologies that are you know shared and accepted in culture and business culture. What if that had an impact on a long-term consequence on the relationship between sales and operations? If I'm not connected with my potential customers, how am I going to be connected with my customers? How could I ever be connected with my operations? I'm not connected. I'm disconnected. And I don't even know I'm disconnected. I'm so disconnected, I think I'm connected. So there are long-term consequences. That's all that comes to mind when you explain the opposite. Like through fear, we hold on to every past experience and control every situation. Labeling our potential customers as A, B, C, D, or E to cope with the negative emotions we felt in past situations we couldn't work through doesn't help us connect with our potential customers. And it could have, I'm not even saying it, I know it could separate ourselves from. And I had similar thing written down. Just I want your thoughts in closing on it. Um, I like that you came up with a word that was like your view of the opposite of inspired. I didn't do that, but it's a great idea. I just said, hold on, assume, judge without honest confrontation, disregard compassion, and stew in resentment. Be a success. Be self glorified and proud. That's what I had. Yeah.
I like this. I like this exercise. I think it's actually useful because a lot of people will I mean, even in my own organization, I think it's useful to show like almost, they do like satire or like it's ironic, like, but for those that are actually can identify with it, like, ooh, because you said something at the end when you were responding to my stuff that the that sometimes people think they have a connection, they're keeping a connection, but they don't even know that they're not because they're not having the conflict, they're not having the open discussion, right? So sometimes this discussion of the inverse might hit somebody in the feels, like, because if they think they're being faithful, they're going out and doing this stuff because the success is there, from a financial standpoint or relational, it seems like everything is really good on the surface. They might even miss what they're doing. And I know we have a limited time, but I want to respond to a couple of the things that you said the first time, which was like, you talked about how like, because of our experience, we would close down. We would say, "Ah, like forget the haters and this and that, and move on." And somebody's past experience towards us would close us down, and then we become so successful. And you say you saw it in businesses that they would lose who they were. They would lose that connection. And I really think that that's a real thing, like that can go on because once my experience is once I've learned how to navigate communication on a customer standpoint over and over, I have a high probability of success. That's just I know each sentence, question, whatever. And if I know how to navigate that, I have the highest probability of success. I think. I don't know that I have the full experience of that because I do believe that internally I've always wanted to know the client. I do believe that everything that I've learned to solve the problem is based off of my own past experiences and not wanting the client to feel negatively, uneducated, not wanting to feel taken advantage of, not have transparency, not have a communication showing up on time, a good job, a good value, follow through, all these things. Like, I think that it was all those things that I potentially experienced in my life that I didn't want other people to experience through Guardian that then drove me to know them, ask the questions, and I intuitively could pick up on what was going on. So these people that potentially other salespeople wouldn't have been able to connect with, because this is the tricky part. The client face to the salesperson is reserved, standoffish, cold. They don't want to reveal things. They're fearful, right, of all this stuff. And if the sales rep then mirrors that and like, well, whatever, I'm out of here. They weren't open. They were worried. They didn't even want to talk to me about anything. Like, if we could compartmentalize that, put it to the side and look at the client for who they are. They don't know. They're not sure. The world is tough. People take advantage. Contractors are the worst. So all these different things that they're navigating. So because I sidestepped that and got to know the person, I had this high probability of success. But that's really close to what you're saying, is that if you ignore those things, ignore, like from sales 101, ignore what the client says. Buyers are liars. Just ignore it and just keep plowing forward. That takes the relational standpoint out of it. And I can see how somebody can become unauthentic and then empty, even though they have this high level of reward, and not have a connection, because I've experienced that. Once you start to know, like, you can then separate, like, all right, this client's not upset or mad or anything. They're just nervous about this. So let me, through, being comfortable with listening to that and then working through the relationship. But when I do it from a standpoint, like, it's become so reactional over time, like, I just know this is the next thing to do. I can lose a little bit of that relational standpoint. And then it does become, it has in the past become a little not as rewarding, not as meaningful. So I can see how that could go in that direction, of losing that relational standpoint. But ultimately, I think that through the cycle of business, then salespeople come into play. And then I'm teaching salespeople how to do that. So then we're having those relationships. Now they're going out and doing that with the client. And then as we grow, we're growing organization and managers. Right now, how do managers manage with salespeople or manage operations? And this is not like, oh, this is a simple solution to success. This is a clunky, like a square wheel getting rounded off as time goes on. So I say this because I can see how managers, salespeople, and leaders, owners, founders, CEOs of companies can become so separated as time goes on based off of past experiences, but it's so simple. It's like it's all going on at the same time, meaning once the awareness is there, you can create that connection back over again. Like when you get out of, to use your terminology, out of the top part of the page and out of the bottom part of the page, and then come right back to center and be present with the person that you're sitting with, right? That whether it's the your brother or sister. That was another great thing you said earlier. And the thing you said, all right, dude, if I'm looking at my brother and sister as a prospect, I'm already starting off in the separation. Like if we are walking this world as it's flip it, treating someone as you're treating yourself. Like I could be at the door. Is somebody treating me like the next number, the next means to an end, or like they want to know me, like, hey, were you here during the storm? Whatever way that bid for connection comes from. So again, great. And I want to be sensitive for timing. So great job, unpacking this and making me think. Thank you very much. I
If
appreciate
you're
it.
um, if you're listening to this podcast, please share this to a friend. Think about your enemies. Maybe share this with them too. And please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. Follow Robert, and we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.